welcome back. Today I am hacking my own pattern. So for those that don't want to use grommets, I have used D-rings and funky connectors instead. So stay tuned and I'll show you how. Guys, so I've prepped everything, ironed and interfaced it. As usual, my lining's got the medium woven iron-on interfacing, and then my outside pockets have got the extra heavy non-woven iron-on interfacing. And then instead of grommets, because we're doing the other bits, I have cut 4 of these to attach each of the D-rings. So you'll also need 4 extra D-rings. And these are 2 inches wide and 3 inches long, because my D-rings are going to be 1 inch wide. If you're using a different size, just make these bigger or smaller accordingly. Alright, so I'm going to speed through the bits that were in the other video. I'm still going to do them here, but just, you know, a little bit of speed sewing, I guess. So I have put double-sided tape down the center, pretty much all my vinyl strapping pieces. And then I'm going to fold each side into the center. I've also found I can do it quicker if I don't draw the center line. It's almost like it's distracting. So I just fold both into the center and then push down, and theoretically that then sits in the middle. Or at least it sits in the middle enough that we're not going to notice if it's not perfectly center. Because the idea of this is we just want to hide the join. So if it's not directly in the center, nobody's going to know. Therefore, nobody's going to care. It's just to avoid the edges. Which, if you've got the edge paint, you can definitely do that way instead. I've put edge paint on my accent panel. So to save on vinyl, you could just make this single layer and then edge paint both the edges. It's quicker, but it's longer. Or it uses less stuff, but it takes more time, I guess. You'll use half as much vinyl, but you've got to sit and literally watch paint dry, which is what I had to do before I did this video. Alright, so my strap on top is, I cut 1.5 inches, and then this part's 2, so it's going to deliberately be smaller because I like the little accent. Ew. And my blue is playing up. It took me 3 goes to wind a bobbin today, so I don't really know what's going on there. Doesn't want to be my friend, apparently. Alright, so in the center, and then I'm just going to stitch down. I've got a 3 3/4 stitch length going on. So you just want to line them up. If you don't want to do it this way, you can also just stick another piece of double-sided tape down the center, and that will put the fabric in place, which will make it quicker to sew, but you've still got that extra step. Oh no. And this is I have overcut something. Actually, I just think I didn't cut this piece down. That's what I did. This is just the whole width of the fabric. I'm like, what's going on? So I've just cut off a little bit past the vinyl so I can tuck the raw end under. Needle down, pivot, back over, pivot again. And then almost speed sew down the other side. I just have to make sure that the other side's tucked in, because sometimes it misbehaves. Now, if you don't like working with vinyl, you could make this strap all fabric. That's not at all an issue. You just cut it 4 times as wide as you need it, so that you can have all your raw edges tucked into the center. Okay. So again, I'm just pushing it into the center. You guys have seen me make straps like this 1,000 times. These ones are just different sizes. Oh, I think I can hear a helicopter outside. That's new. apologize if it gets too loud. It sounds like it's getting closer and closer. Alright, that is on. Next strap. Now, because I'm using, this is a cotton sateen fabric, so it's actually got quite a lot of stretch in it. So I think another reason why I'm having so much trouble with this strap is because the fabric's stretching as I'm sewing. Sounds like it's right outside my window. I'm sorry for the noise. Alright, this one's still stretched. So this one's stretched just a little bit. To be fair, my cotton straps often stretch, so the fact that this is extra stretchy is probably, that was pretty good, really. I don't pull on the fabric where possible. I'm actually pushing down to try and help prevent stretching, but it happens. So my stitch here is 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the fabric on top. You can always get closer if you want to. Alright, strap's done. Now I'm going to grab all of my hardware bits, just so that I've got less sitting next to me. So you should have four swivel clips. You don't have to use swivel clips if you don't want to. You could use the ones that just bend back and forth. And then I've got 2 strap adjusters. Now these ones move in the middle. You can also get ones that don't move in the middle. I personally use both. Just depending on what I feel like that day. So I'm going to go up and over the middle bar with the vinyl touching. And that way my accent's going to sit to the outside of my strap. You can do it the other way, but it then feels a little bit pointless going to all that effort of putting the fabric on there because you won't see it. It's different on a handbag. Alright, then I'm going to slip flat side on the vinyl and then go back up through my strap adjuster and back down the other side. And then again, flat side onto the vinyl so it folds onto itself. And then stitch it down. You can also use rivets for this. Obviously I'm not, but you can. It's not that I don't love rivets. I definitely love rivets. Alright, so that's one strap done. We're going to do the other one. And then pop them aside because we don't need them till the end construction. Alright, up and in. Slide one strap adjuster on. And then up, down. Next one. I like to do my straps first while I know I've got a relatively full bobbin because I like to avoid joins where possible. It's not always possible because I'm not paying enough attention sometimes, or I can't hear my bobbins running out. So quite often I can actually hear a change in the noise, and that's how I know the bobbin's about to go. Okay. So I'm going to take my main pocket, which should be your square, and put right sides together, and then stitch with a normal stitch length, 1/4 inch, around the sides and the top. We're leaving the bottom open. I'm also hacking this to show you how to put in a magnetic snap instead. Magnetic snaps are obviously easier, but if you're using your bag for, say, a motorbike, you'll want a press stud because the magnetic snaps flap in the wind. So I will be using the magnetic clasp instead. If you want to, you can trim down your corners. You can also use a bigger seam allowance. It just means your pocket will be smaller. I'm going to stick my fingers in the corners, grab it, and then push. And then I'm going to get my stiletto or sewing awl. And I'm just going to flick out the corners to make sure that they're nice and crisp and actually square. But you don't want to pull too hard. You'll either break a thread or you'll pull out the raw edge, which is not ideal. Alright, so I'm going to top stitch this top edge with a decorative stitch length, so back up to 3 3/4. And back stitch. Okay, so now I'm going to measure with a ruler that I've got here. I'm going to find the center. And then I'm going to go 1 inch down from there to install my magnetic snap. So find the center, which is there, and then there. Mark it, and then I'm going to take my gasket and I'm going to lay that over the top, draw the lines. I'm going to use my craft knife. This one I got from the scrapbooking section in Spotlight, but you can get them everywhere. You can get pen knives as well. When this one dies, I'm definitely buying myself a pen knife just because I think it's cool. And then because I'm using fabric on here, I'm also just going to put a little bit of fray stopper glue. It'll stop the edges fraying down the track. And so therefore your magnet will hold and last longer. So I'm going to push the female side in. So the bulkier side goes on here and the lighter side will go on the top flap. Ah, there we go. Yeah. Love it. So now I'm going to take the same ruler and my friction texter. So these ones are by Pilot. They're literally called friction. Basically, they're heat erasable, but you can also use Chaco pen. Actually, I might have to use Chaco pen because I'm not going to see that. So this is basically chalk dust and there's a wheel in the bottom. They're super fun. And you can get them in different colors. I do stock some on my website and I just buy the colors that I can get as I can get them. Because they're usually always out of white. So sometimes they get blue. Alright, so where that line is, now we're just going to fold it over with the lining side touching itself. Now, if you've got an iron, you can press this if you want. And then I'm just going to stitch. I'm sticking with my decorative stitch length. And I'm going to stitch as close to that edge as I can without running off the edge. So it's probably about a 1/16. But just close. All right, other side. So we're going to, again, make the lining sides touch. I'm making sure we backstitch at the top to lock those stitches in. And as you can see, I cut my outside fabric more rectangular than square. So I'm just going to even that up. There's somebody at my door. Okay, squared up the bottom. We're all good there now. So that bit's done. So grab your front of your hip bag. Mine are the same front and back, but on the back I've done my embroidered logo. So then the easiest way to find the center is to fold it in half and make a small clip. And then we do the same to this side as well. And then you can line that up with the 2 clips so that your pocket will sit in the center. You can also measure it if you'd like. I obviously very clearly don't do that. So now that I've got these parts tucked under, I'm going to make sure it's in the center, and then I'm just going to draw a line on each side of the pocket. And again, you can measure this out and draw your line. So you can measure the halfway to there, find the halfway, draw your line. I just find that quicker. It's just my thing. So now I'm going to pull these out and I'm going to stitch this edge along the line we just drew. I'm going to go back to a joining stitch because this will be a weight loading. So the more you pull out your pocket, this is where it's going to be. We're going to back stitch at the top, trim off your tails, and then I'm going to do the same to the other side. So I'm going to go bottom to top. I like to go bottom to top on these types of things. Oh, don't knot now. Alright. My machine's not liking back stitch today, apparently. And then chop off your tails. And then you can press this, and your edges should line up so that your pocket sits flat. Like so. Obviously, I can't just go and iron mine because this is vinyl, but I can finger press it pretty well so it sits flat, and that's more for like the video. So there's the pocket on. Now we're going to do our flap. So I have done the fabric on both sides, and obviously one is upside down, so when we flip it down and up, the skulls are the right way. You can also do the inside piece in your lining fabric if you'd like. I like this fabric, so I put it as many places as I can. I almost put it as the lining as well. So when I get to the corners, I always lift my foot and readjust to make sure I get some nice points. And then I'm just going to come and clip off these little bits here. Just chopping little weird triangles out so that when I turn it, it's going to sit nicer. And again, I pinch the corners and then push them out. Like so. I also used Form Fuse 6, or the extra heavy non-woven iron-on interfacing, which is also known as Form Fuse 1600 by one of the brands. It's like Band-Aids. They're technically called plasters, but everyone just calls them Band-Aids. Anyway, so I used that on both pieces to give this like a nice stability, and also because the lining side is going to have a magnet, and you want that to have structure and not pull through. So I just put the heavy interfacing on both. I'm going to top stitch this before I put my magnet in, just because I think I'm going to find it easier. And I don't know what's going on with my machine. It's not liking the blue today. Or it's just not liking me today. Alright, tails in the bin. So then we want to make sure that we're putting our magnet on the right side. So just think about that if you've got directional fabric. So I'm going to put it in the center. Mark it. Cut it. Fray stop it. So this is still the same bottle I've had since the start of all my videos. And I obviously make more than what I just do in videos. So it lasts a really long time. And it only holds 50 mils. or 1.7 ounces. All right, magnet installed. The easiest way to see the center is because it comes to a point. But you can still measure that if you're not confident in just adding it on like I did. Then we're going to grab our ruler and rule our line for where we plan on putting our flap. And again, this is chalk, so it's completely erasable. And I'm about to hide it anyway. Okay, so make sure that you can see your magnet. And then just center it. And we're going to stitch as close to that edge as possible. So we're going to do back to a joining stitch. So we want to attach our flap, not just make it look pretty. And if you're using a stretchy sateen, definitely make sure that it is fused really well to your interfacing so it doesn't stretch and pucker. Mine's beautiful and, oh, actually, it's a lie. There's one right there. But you don't want it to pucker and kind of gather because that is the curse of playing with sateen. It does that. And I heat press this on. All right. So now if you didn't get really, really close to the edge, you can come back in with some scissors and just bend it over like this and trim it off. I don't really have anything to trim, but you get the idea. So you bend your blue back so that you can get right in there and get really close to the stitches. Then we're going to fold this down and finger crease it over. Again, if you haven't used vinyl, feel free to iron it. And then I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch from the top edge, back stitch. So what this is doing is it's making the flap sit down flush, and it's also hiding that raw edge. Love it. Then it should just close like that. Now where I put my thing was a deliberate choice so that it's, the pocket will sit out and still stay shut. Because as soon as you put something in there, like I've got my whole fist like that in there. And so it still stays shut and doesn't kind of pull on the top too much. All right, so I'm going to just baste the bottom down. So it's going to sit where I want. And that is now that front pocket completely done. Onto our zipper pocket. So grab one of your lining pieces, a ruler, a pen, and I'm going to measure 1 inch from the top, which is not something I normally do, but there is method to my madness, I promise. So now we want to go and make sure that the line that we're ruling is going to fit our zipper pocket panel, right? So you want this hole to be the same size as the lines that we're ruling. Because if it's too big, it probably doesn't matter, but if it's too small, it's going to wreck the look that we're going for. So mine is a little bit actually too small. So I'm just going to put the lines in like that. And then I'm going to take the front and I'm going to measure down so that it's sitting where I want it. We want it in the middle. So an easy way to do the middle, actually, fold it in half, clip it, fold it in half, clip it. Easiest way to find the middle, always. You can measure it, but it's a curve. So this is quicker, like that. So now they should line up like so, but we don't want it to sit there. We want it to sit further down. So just going to measure that. and then stitch this on. So I'm going to start in the corner. I'm going to do a couple of stitches and back stitch. Now this is not the way that everybody does accent panels, and that's okay. But this is the way and there goes all of my clips. Every time. I've done that twice yesterday and now once today. And it's only morning. That does not bode well for the rest of my day. Oh well, whatever. I'll pause and pick them up when we're up to them. They can stay there for now. They can't fall again if they're down there. Alright, so I'm just going to cut down the center. So I'm cutting through the vinyl and the pocket. And then I'm triangling out my corners. Because that's what I like to call it. I don't really know what it's called. I should look it up. So I've got triangles in your corners. And then we're going to push the pocket through the hole. Now because this is vinyl, I'm going to finger crease. So I'm going to push this under and then finger crease along the vinyl. Again, if you've done it all fabric, you can iron it. Or you can finger crease it. Okay. Like so. And then we're going to take our accent panel. Now, I painted my edges just because I could. I got all my edge paint in, actually. That's the main reason why I did it. I wanted to play with it. I've got like 7 colors now. So you just want to start. It doesn't really matter where we start, to be honest, because we're not going to backstitch. This is one thing we're not going to do. We're just going to sew. I'm sewing 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And I'm making sure that my pocket piece is out of the way. So I'm not sewing that lining. I'm just kind of shoving it out of my way as I go around. And this is why I haven't joined the other piece on, because it's much easier to do it when it's only one small piece. You can change up the shape of the accent panel to kind of work with whatever you're doing too, which would be fun. All right, so I'm back to the start, and then I'm just going to do 2 little back stitches. We don't want to draw attention to it. We want it to look smooth and glorious. So that's that on. Now I'm going to take my zipper. Since I'm using a gunmetal grey hardware, I'm going to use some silver zip or grey zip. Dark grey, this one's called. Then I'm going to put my zipper pull on now. So you just crack the zip and then feed both sides into it together. I have a whole separate video that's like 2 minutes long that is how to use a zipper jig, so I don't bring it over every video anymore. If you guys want to check it out, you can check it out. Okay, so now I'm just pulling this up and I'm going to lay the zipper or the zipper accent over the top, and then we're just going to stitch the inside rectangle. So I'm going to hold that because I have a feeling it was going to disappear on me. So this time we're sewing through the fabric and the zipper. When we get to the zipper pull, we're going to open it, which I'm nearly there, hold on. We're going to unzip it back to where we've already sewn so that it's out of the way, and that then won't distort our stitching. And I just ran out of bobbin thread because I forgot to check. Of course I did. That's right. At least I had a second one prepared. All right. All right, so I'm going to go back to where I was. I'm going to do one stitch and go back through that same hole and then continue on. It's going to lock that stitch in place without causing a big mess. Needle down in the corner, pivot. Needle down, pivot. Chop off that tail and this one so they don't get caught up. Stitch along, move the zip. Two stitches back, one more forward to lock in your stitches, and it's on. I'm just going to come on the back and chop off those tails from where I had to join it. So the zip from the front, glorious, and then from the back, the zipper goes all the way to the edge because we're going to stitch that into our seam. So put right sides together, and then we're going to stitch up across the top and down. So you can do that however you like. I'm going to do it in one nice smooth motion. Needle down, pivot, pull the bag down out of the way. So the reason we left the 1 inch at the top when we measured our zipper box is because that was much easier to sew than if I was trying to get really close with the 1/2 inch. Making sure that we back stitch at the finish. Oh good, and they're starting up bombing again today. Fantastic. You guys get all the sounds of my home today. There we go, that's better. Okay. So that is now basically where we've normally done. Now we're going to go on to our strap connectors. So I'm going to do the 2 different ways that you can do them because I think it's going to look fun. So I'm just going to fold each side into the center. And again, I made these 2 inch because I'm using 1 inch D-rings. If you're using 3/4 inch D-rings, make these 1.5 by 3. See, look, I'm remembering. I pre-put on all of the double-sided tape so you don't have to watch me today. I'm sure you've seen me do it like 1,000,000 times now. So this is good vinyl and it's not going to pop open, so I'm going to do all 4 at the same time. And they're just little bits, so they coat pretty well. And then to add some decorativeness to these, I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the center on each of them. Now again, you don't have to make these out of vinyl. You could definitely do these out of fabric. And if you're super new to sewing, what you can do is take a pen, your Chaco pen and a ruler, and actually rule a line down the center. And then you can stitch 1/8 of an inch each side of the line that you drew. Like that. I don't have to do that anymore because I can eyeball the center really well. But for those that are just beginning, the line is a really good idea. I'm also chain stitching these so that I waste less thread and don't have to stop as often. And then you can just separate them all. Okay, so this is the one that I drew on. Let me just rub it on my pants really quickly. Problem solved, because it's chalk. Okay, so there's 2 ways we're going to do these. The first one is I'm going to slide the D-ring on and fold both sides into the center. And these are going to go on an angle up like this. So we want to make sure that it's not too close to the edge, but still close-ish. You know, that's not super helpful. How about I put some double-sided tape everywhere and I'll measure it for you. All right. Come on, backing. Don't mess with me. There it comes. Fantastic. All right. So the reason these don't have to be perfectly in the center, so don't be super worried about that. The point of it is that there's no raw edges that are going to be showing. That's why we do it like this. So then I'm going to take another piece of tape and stick it on the back. So now this is going to help position it for us. So it'll still shift, but less so than if we had no tape. So I'm not going to eyeball it. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I am going to measure 3/4 of an inch and then place it. Because we've got 1/4 of an inch coming around, and then we still want to be able to top stitch that. And 1/2 inch, I just don't think would cut it. So we've gone all the way to 3/4, and I'm putting it on an angle like this. Now, if your machine can't handle sewing this many layers, you could just put 2 rivets on there. That would be super fun. Or you can stitch around the entire box. I, for funsies, am going to do both. Because I think the rivets will look cool, and the stitching's going to give it that added support. This would also be super fun if I had have picked like an opposite thread color. I should have done this in white. It would have looked really fun. All my top stitching is kind of being wasted when it's all the same color. All right, so this is a nice soft supple vinyl, so that wasn't really hard to sew through. And because I've used vinyl, I didn't interface this because I don't want it too stiff. I want it to actually bend to my leg. If you're doing a fabric base, please interface it with something heavier. I would be using the extra heavy non-woven iron-on. I believe America, you'd use Decaville Light. I think that's the one that you'd use. I need to get better acquainted with the American equivalents of what I use. All right, so again, fold it in. Gonna need the ruler again. Another little bit of tape for the back. It may seem like a lot of tape, but it just means that I can kind of let go without having clips everywhere. Because it's such a small piece, having all like wonder clips everywhere would kind of get in the way. And then 3/4 of an inch on the nice angle. Push, squish, whichever word you'd like to use. And I'm going to start at the top because why not? 2 forward, 2 back. Turn and down. Needle down, pivot. Back stitch when you get back to the start to lock your stitches in. Chop off your tails. There you go, rivet free. And then we're going to push those down so that we don't accidentally stitch them later. That is important. All right, next 2. So these ones I'm going to have coming out of the seam, just because there's not really enough room to add that down there on the angle that I would want it on. So I'm going to slide the D-ring on, and I'm actually going to stitch 1/8 of an inch up the side and across the top. And then down, back stitch. Do this to both, and then we can just place them on the bag, clip them in place. I haven't forgotten about my rivets. I just want to do all the stitching and then get up. Chop off the tails. So I'm just going to put them on an angle that I feel comfortable with. Get rid of that tail that's popping out there. because you will see both sides of it. So the back is now just as important as the front. I can reach some clips that didn't quite fall on the floor. So I'm just going to put those, again, on an angle, so like a 45-degree angle out of the corners. Even though they're curved corners, you still get the idea. I really need more clips which are on the floor, but that's okay. All right, so that's now where they're going to sit. So now I'm going to do my rivets. So I just need to grab my hole punch, which I now got a hole punch that is for the press, which, by the way, best decision I ever did. If you've got arthritis in your hands, also great decision. Grab 2 rivets. So this is going to serve as both decorative and functional because it's going to give some extra strength to these, and I just threw that away. I'm doing mine between the stitches, so I'm not wrecking any of my stitches by putting this in. It's just some added strength. In it goes. Squish it down with rivets. Right, so it looks nice. It's adding a little bit more hardware to the bag, but in a positive way. And now we are up to clipping them together. So I have to pause the video to go pick up all my clips. Lots of people have asked me how strong are my balls and will they survive dropping. I know mine go into carpet, but I also drop it guaranteed once a week. Lately is like twice a day. And it survives fine. So, open your zipper pocket. Single most important part of right now. Right sides together. And then just start clipping. So you can pick any location you like. Make sure that your D-rings, so the bottom ones, you want them down. And at the top ones, you want all the D-rings basically facing the center. So that you don't hit them with your needle and snap a needle and wreck the hardware. I already did that once this morning. I was making a Heidi by Swoon and I had the D-ring on the side flipped back and snapped my needle. So whoops. Luckily it was almost time for a new needle again anyway. Which, by the way, general rule of thumb, domestic sewing machines, you're supposed to only do about 9 hours worth of sewing on a needle and then change it out. So if you're a weekend sewer and you sew pretty much all weekend, I would change it every weekend. You don't wait until they snap. It can mess up timing and put notches and issues inside your machine, costing quite a lot. And needles aren't that expensive. You get like 8 needles for $5. That is much cheaper than a service on your machine. So 9 hours as a general rule. I count usually by bags, so I do X amount of bags. And then I stop because these are industrial needles and they're a bit bigger. So an easy way I remember it is I do about 9 bags. More if it's clutches, obviously, because clutches have less sewing in them. I also don't know why I'm pinning this so much. I don't need this many clips. I'm just being excessive because I'm chatting. I also put half my clips on backwards because, again, I was chatting. That's okay. So we're going to stitch all the way around with a joining stitch. So I'm back to 2.5. You can start wherever. I'm going to start here today because that's how I've positioned it. I also like to stitch with the pocket up just to make sure that it's not shifting and being sewn into places it shouldn't. If you are worried about such things but you want to stitch from the other way, turn the pocket in on itself so now it can't go anywhere. So again, we're doing a joining stitch. Now I'm going to back stitch over this corner because it's going to have a weight-bearing leg strap. And we just, you know, want to make sure it's really going to stay. this so much harder because half my clips are upside down, just so you know. So I'm doing like 4 stitches forward, 3 back, 5 forward, 4 back. So instead of having to come back or I have to try and backstitch the entire curve, I'm doing it as I go, just to reinforce those stitches. Now, if you're doing a bigger seam allowance, which the pattern will technically let you do, so these curves, you could do a bigger seam allowance and have them kind of more pointy. That's fine, but you will need to clip your curves. Doesn't matter if you stitch the top of this pocket down either, by the way. It's just the bottom that we care about. Back to the start, go over a few, backstitch, pull her out. Done. And again, if you need to or you want to, you can clip these, but because of the small seam allowance, I will not be. So I'm going to grab a bottom, I'm going to push to make a poppet, because apparently that's my favorite analogy of what I'm doing. And then so now that I've pulled out one corner, I now pull the lining so it's facing the right way. And basically it then engulfs the bag. So I do this with a lot of bags, actually. A lot of small stuff I turn through. Bigger bags, I leave the whole base open because it's quicker. And then I'm just going to pull here and then grab this and kind of ease it out. So I roll my wrist a little bit so that I'm not just outright pulling, because that could be detrimental to your sewing depending on your thread strength and such things. Push. So now that most of it's out, I'm going to stick my hand back in and push from the other side. Look at that. Beautiful. Same with this one. And then I'm going to get, please tell me I've got it here. Yes, I do. My flute cleaner. And yes, you may be wondering why. I used to play flute as a kid. I'm going to stick it in and I'm going to push it along all of my seams. So what this is going to do is it's going to help push everything all the way out, especially up here, where it's going to be really hard to get your hands in. I can just shove from here. And I'm pushing this along all the edge to push out the seam entirely, making sure that it's going to have all its nice roundness to it. If you wanted to, you could also have squared up the corners of the pattern if you want it more, I guess, manly. And then, to get this crease, I'm going to grab it and I'm going to push it back and forth against itself, and it helps to crease that in. Now, because we don't have to put rivets in, like the last one, you can actually just seal the pocket now and push it in. So I'm just going to tuck under my raw edges, stitch as close to that edge as I can. I'm still on my joining stitch. If you've got a bag tag you want to put in, here's a good spot to put it. Or even in the side of this pocket would be nice, because then you'll still be able to see it. Now this pocket isn't big enough to actually touch any of these sides. It would be detrimental to if we were putting rivets in, but because we're not, you can just tuck it in and that's fine. And then I'm going to go back up to a decorative stitch length. And I'm going to start, where do I want to start? Here's a little bit bulky because I use cotton sateen and it's thicker. So I'm going to take my flat leatherworking pliers and just squish it. I use 2 hands to squish it because why hurt one wrist when I don't need to? And then anywhere else. So these corners have actually become a little bit flat because we put these in. But that's not a problem, I don't think. I think it's still cute. It still works. So now I'm just going to top stitch all the way around the edge. So I don't want to start on bulk. That's never a good idea. You want to roll out your edges as well. So we want to have a nice edge. Now, if you're new to sewing and new to top stitching, do a full 1/4 inch. So move further in because you'll find it easier to do. More advanced, you should do 1/8 of an inch as your top stitching thread. Again, this would be really fun if I had have used white, but I didn't because I didn't think of it until too late. Slow and steady wins the race with top stitching. There is no hurry. And even if there is a hurry, don't hurry. You're more likely to wreck it. I have no idea how long this video is, but again, slow and steady top stitching. Because to get around that curve nicely, you've got to be slow. And because I'm doing 1/8 of an inch, I don't want to fall off the edge for any unbeknown reason. Alright. So the only potential place you'll have an issue is along this bottom, in those corners where you've got the multiple layers. But my machine handled it fine. I just went nice and slow. If you've got a compound feed, you'll be fine. And a domestic, slow and steady wins the race. Gonna melt my final ends. And we are done. No grommets needed. What have I got? That's my short one. So this will come down the bottom for the leg. Just clip it on. And then this one up the top. And you are done. I hope that was helpful, guys. I like that I hacked my own pattern. Probably should have put this in the pattern, but I didn't really think of it. I just really wanted to play with grommets. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you got any more questions. Come and join my group and show me if you've made one, because I'd love to see what other people do with it. And I know I always forget this, but subscribe to my channel and like the video if you liked it, because apparently it helps. I have been informed. Anyway, bye guys!